Board games, board games. I might be talking about board games with a political message, but I'm not gonna shout. I love it when board games try to do new stuff, but sometimes that might be kind of rough. And I guess I'm saying let's not hold them to the same measures. Maybe a political board game cannot give us the same pleasures, but at the same time, the designer needs to be aware of the scope. And when it comes time to say, should this game have 50 levels, maybe the designer should say no. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. ish, UK time for Busy Beats and Board Game Bledder, episode 956. A look at political games. I'm going to talk about Mapmaker, the Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game, Gerrymander, a voting districts puzzle game. That's the full title of those things with the subtitle, and Monopoly, which, along with its precursor, the Landlord's game, because for all the people who say Monopoly was designed this way by Lizzie McGee, yes, it kind of was, but there is a strong distinction between the Landlord's game and what Monopoly became, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, let me talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights, I mean, I'm not sure if I can call it a highlight, but I played through the entirety of Gerrymander, a voting districts puzzle game, and yeah, I got to it. This is a nice wee game with a lovely message. I think it's around, it says, and I'll show you a wee bit of it in a minute, but it's after a certain point, like level 5 or something, it says, hey, if you agree that this is an issue, get in touch with your representative. And here's a form where we can help you work out who's your representative. And it assumes that you're based in the USA because it asks you to put in your states and whatnot. And then it keeps going until level 50. And I played through more out of a sense of compulsion than a sense of pleasure, if I'm being honest. I've also played a lot of Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game, which is a wonderful game, which I think that the nice thing here is that, Eve, you play this game and you play it over and over. It's got like the typical, it's got the depth of any abstract strategy game. It's a really brilliant game in its own right. But then as you're playing it, you realize, hey, this is a representation of blue and red and potentially green and yellow. Yeah, well, there is potentially, it goes up to 4 players and then it becomes even more political, appropriately enough. But these colors all have the exact same values of the voters. And when you're making the districts, of course, it's going to be slightly unequal. And it's about how do you make it unequal in your favor. And yeah, I played a couple of times with QWERTY Martin, who's absolutely brilliant and will demolish you. But this is a game that takes a different approach. Says rather than being more didactic, we're going to allow people to feel it through the mechanics. And I also shared a tweet. Okay, look, when I put hashtag board game hot takes, what I'm basically saying is that I'm stripping it of the nuance, and it might not be something that I agree with 100%. But what I said is Monopoly apologists are the new hipsters. And of course, that is me, hopefully with that hashtag, people kind of say, yeah, Bez is being slightly facetious, but there is some truth behind it. And I wanted people to comment about it. And a lot of people said, hey, you shouldn't be shitting on Monopoly. You shouldn't be yucking other people's yum. People who say Monopoly is terrible are the worst kind of people. You're not going to draw them to our hobby. And I agree. I'm not saying that you should go out there and say, hey, what kinds of games do you like? Monopoly? Oh, that's a terrible game. Come play games like us. That's not a way to persuade anyone to say that something they've enjoyed is terrible. But what I am saying is that there are a growing number of people who seem to be saying, yes, if you play Monopoly by the correct rules and don't house rule it, then it's actually a good game. People who seem to be claiming that all of the issues with Monopoly are basically just the house rules. People who say that it's a good game, that I would probably enjoy it, that I should play it by the correct rules, that it will take not that long. And I won't say, I have played Monopoly by the correct rules. As a child, I was a weird child, I guess. I really enjoyed reading rule books. And I mean, it's not like we had loads of them, but after playing Monopoly with the family a couple of times, I was like, oh, wow, there's a rule book. If I read a rule book, I will know all the things that there are. And, early on in life, my family said that I should maybe become a lawyer because I was really excited by learning what the rules are, learning what we're actually able to do. And we had already been using the correct rules. Yes, we'd done the auction. No, we didn't bring extra money into the game with free parking or whatever. Yes, we took the money out of the game, except for, when you pass go, you still get some money. And it still drags on. It still, at its higher player counts, certainly. I mean, even at the lower player counts, it devolves at a certain point into two people, and there's a strong likelihood it will go back and forth and carry on for a very long time. And I'm not saying it's a terrible game. I think Monopoly is actually a brilliant game for when it was made, considering that it was designed in 1913. I think it's brilliant. I think that there's so many great things about it. Now, the truth is, I want to take a step back before I go into all of this, before I go into the history of Monopoly and Landlord's game. Let's talk about brilliant thing, what's a little thing which is brilliant. Why are political games a brilliant thing? Why are they a valuable thing? I think it's because games are capable of so much more than they're currently doing. Games are able to elicit joy and fiero and excitement, but are also able to elicit insightfulness and consideration and pondering. I mean, Schindler's List might not be a film that you would go and see when you need a quick pick-me-up. It's not everyone's idea of a good time at the cinema, but it's a very worthwhile film. I think there's so many films out there that deliver more. It's kind of like, films have tragedies, they've got comedies, they've got documentaries, and a lot of people think of board games not as a medium, but as a genre. And that's inherently problematic when you've got stuff like Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr, and it just doesn't do as well as I would have loved it to, as, everyone involved would have loved it to. Because Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr, it's taking this bold new move into exploring what it means to be human, exploring what it means to care for someone at the end of their life. And it's meant to be a slightly morose, thoughtful process where you play it and then you're like, oh, wow, that was an experience. And it's not like you go, hey, that was great fun. I mean, fun cannot be what all board games are striving for. Fun, would you consider, every good documentary you've ever watched fun? Would you consider all the dramas that you've watched to be fun? I mean, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with fun. Of course, I love fun. I made Yogi, and I'm still really proud of that. And I designed a new version of it last year that I submitted to Gerrymander, and like a prequel. So there's Yogi, and then Yogi Guru, and then there was going to be Yogi Party. Anyway, let's not get into that. But like, I made a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after some mixed noises. I made a game about quickly grabbing creatures that are totally different and counting your turnips. These games are not meant to be simulations about the nature of humanity. These games are meant to be fun. But games that say this is worthwhile, but it's exploring what's out with that space that's normally considered fun. Yeah. Hope you understand that what I'm saying is brilliant is games that dare to be more than just fun. That's what I'm saying is brilliant. Games like Freedom, the Underground Railroads, games like, a lot of LARPs do it already. Yeah, there's so many LARPs that play into this space, but then when we get into packaged, mass-produced stuff, like for something to not be fun, yeah, to have a strong statement, I think that games, well, there are already so many games, and let's pay more attention to those games that dare to be more than just fun, because games are not just a genre, they are a medium capable of so much more. And that's why political games are brilliant. Anyway, as always, feel free to comment, ask questions from like follow. I do answer all the questions and comments that I get. That I mean, well, firstly, all the respectful ones, like if it's a robot or someone being bigoted, then I just delete it. And there has been at least one comment that YouTube has hidden from me and I can't reply. So I apologize to that person. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, let's crack on. And I guess let's start off with the Landlord's game. And this is a fine camera. So, Landlord's game. Lizzie McGee, patented January the 5th, 1904. This is, you're wandering around and then you're getting these properties and then you're charging other people. And the idea was that, Lizzie McGee was a Georgist. And what this meant at the time was that Lizzie McGee believed that the only thing that should be taxed is land. I think at the time maybe they weren't really considering oil and stuff to be finite resources in the way that we do today. But the point was that anything you've worked for yourself, then you should just keep. But stuff that property owners should be charged, like people should not be making money off something that is kind of should be there for everyone. So people should not be making money off air or the land. That was the idea, and that property owners are problematic. That was the idea. And that was meant to be what this game illustrated. There were two different styles of rules, and you played them both, and you would see, wow, if we all agreed to play by these Georgist ideals in real life, the world would be so much better. It was making a strong political statement. Now, I have never played the Landlord's game, and Monopoly was tweaked and changed and developed, and some would say subverted. So Monopoly, it became a folk game for a while. So it was given to Quakers, and then Quakers made changes, and then more changes were made. And at a certain point, a few people happened upon this, and it was, more than just one person. Charles Darrow, who kind of earned quite a lot of money by getting the rights basically for inventing the name Monopoly and deciding to monetize it, wasn't the first person, but they happen to be the most successful person. And there are some fundamental changes. The biggest change is the set collection. So as you can see on a typical Monopoly board, there's green properties, blue properties, pink, brown, all sorts of colors. And if you get all of one color, you get a bonus. You start being allowed to build extra stuff there. And this was something that had history has lost the information on who came up with this. It certainly wasn't Charles Darrow, and it certainly wasn't Lizzie McGee. It was an unnamed Quaker, someone in the middle. And I say this having read The Monopolists, which has lots of first-hand information and is a book that anyone who's super into this should absolutely go and read. But let's talk about Monopoly as it is. Because at this point, people just say, yes, that's a problem with Monopoly, and it's by design. I mean, to attribute the fact that it takes really long, or the fact that it's got some kind of anything else that you would choose to call a problem by design, I think is ascribing too much intent to the overall design process. And again, it seems like sort of apologists move. Let me go over to Gerrymander, a voting district puzzle game. So this is going to be a short let's play. And this has a lovely little intro where it explains, yes, this is a 5-4 split. And by theory, blue should lose. But if you divide it into 3 bits, then you can make red win, or you can make red lose. So, yeah, it's about gerrymandering. It shows you what gerrymandering does. And it feels like an extension of Nicky Case's interactive essays that have gone on too long. So straight away, it's saying help red win, and red is a 4-5 split. So yeah, boop, boop, boop. And our wee salamander has all sorts of problems. But then you get all these sorts of mobile phone tropes, like the stars, the whole, okay, and you're going through, and it is addictive. And these bits are great. Like, if it was, okay, let's alternate between a level and then a little bit of information and then a level and then a little bit of information, that would be fine. And help blue win. So, look, and there's a whole bunch of issues with this game. One is help blue win. Well, blue can't actually win. It's a tie. And that's a bit weird. I mean, this would be a much better level 3. And my issue with this is that it would have done better as an interactive essay. With all of these puzzles are basically algorithmically generated, and I think it might be level 10 or something, where it then finally says, oh, remember, that doesn't quite, okay, can I, okay, so there is admittedly a little bit of a spatial puzzle. I mean, it's not always something that you can do in 2 seconds, but then it gets repetitive, and then you do it over again and over again and over again. And, you know, this is great. Packing, squishing as many voters into a single district to make them lose elsewhere. Cracking, by making sure that each of your winning, and this is where the game should end. You can help. This is where the game should end. This is what it's leading up to. Make a difference. We have shown you what gerrymandering means. Now get in touch. This would be a really worthwhile end for the game, but it doesn't end. And that's why, let me see. As I said at the bottom, the designer needs to be aware of the ideal scope. So yesterday, I was feeling blooming down. I'm not feeling great today, but hopefully I'll be able to actually get outside today, which I didn't yesterday. And, hopefully I'll do a bit. I did manage to send the final files for my most recent 2 Kickstarters to Rob. So yeah, that's a thing that I managed to do. That's a minor achievement. And so in that state, like I was, okay, I'm going to keep playing, and I'm trusting the designer. I'm trusting that there's going to be something worthwhile. Spoiler alert, it's algorithmically generated all the way. It grows up in, voter size. I mean, by the end, you're making districts of size 7. Like, then it's size 3, then it goes up to size 4, then 5, then 6, and 7, and then level 50, you win, and then it doesn't say congratulations or anything, it just keeps repeating. Then it gives you a new level 50, and then a new level 50, and then it keeps repeating. And then if you keep playing, then your points can keep going up. But who cares about these points? This is just a measure of how much time you've wasted, and then you regret everything. And then you think, why didn't the game stop when it was still a valuable experience? Because that's the key thing. Not every game needs to have 20 levels, let alone 50 levels, to be a valuable experience. Not every game has to be something that you replay to be a valuable experience. And in this day and age, why, like, especially for a game that's been shown in so many galleries, in so many like slightly artsy game events, why are they still being beholden to all these tropes of mobile games? It feels really weird. And then, sure, that has the interface. I mean, the interface is fine, and I don't like. Sure, if you want to use the stars because you think the stars and all those noises keep people playing, then that's fine. But then once you're like, okay, boom, this is the message. No, stop there. Don't keep giving us more and more levels with which to waste our time. What's the point? Do you think that at that point we're going to be like, at level 10, I wasn't quite convinced that gerrymandering was a problem. But yes, now I see that it's unfair. No, you're not going to get that with algorithmically generated levels, for gosh sake. Yeah. I want to talk about Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game. Now, whereas Gerrymander is a video game by design, whilst I have been playing Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game, online with other humans, it is designed as a board game. So everyone takes an exactly equal, in terms of value and number of counters, distributes them randomly around the board, and the point is that it's a fair split. If we had better representation, it would be 50-50. But if one person outplays the other, it's not going to be a tie. I have had a game that's gone to a tie, which actually feels incredibly satisfying, but yeah, most of the things, at least, you win by someone won by a couple of points. And the only reason for that is the gerrymandering in action. Now, Here, the rules for how you make a district is a bit more vague. So you put down, the first person puts down one border, the second person puts down 2 borders, and the next person puts down 3, as you can see. And then after that, each person puts down 4 on each of their turns. And districts need to be at least 4 spaces. And if there's a district that cannot be divided any further, then that's the new district. So of course, a district could be 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. And in theory, you could even get to bigger districts. I mean, let's see if we've got any, like, yeah, I don't see any really giant districts here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like if you imagine a Y shape, because that Y shape, you could have a district that just cannot be divided anymore. And yeah, sorry about all of this. Yeah, I thought there was an example of a Y shape somewhere in the rules, but you get what I mean. And this is a game that kind of operates on 2 levels. So firstly, it presents the subject. It says you are doing this thing, so you can understand that this is something that people do, and you can understand the metaphor. This is something that politicians are doing, changing the places of where the voting districts are, and this is a massive problem. And then it's got the second layer where this is an actually worthwhile game. You keep playing it, and by making it a worthwhile game to play, that means that you're going to be kept reminded of it, if you know what I mean. So with Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game, I'm reminded of it and think, yeah, I'd like to play that. And then I played it and I'm reminded, yeah, this is a big problem with US politics. Now, let's go back to Monopoly and the Landlord's game. I mean, in the end, Liz and McGee got basically hardly any money from, I think it was Parker Brothers. And the Landlord's game in its original version was published, but like with a tiny, tiny print run. And maybe the Landlord's game would be fine because it was at least aware of its scope. It was meant to be more akin to interactive theatre. I think that the Landlord's game, though I haven't played it, I get it. You're meant to play it once this way, once that way, and then have a pondering of how the 2 different rule sets would affect the real world. And yeah, that's fine. Conversely, Monopoly was now just being played for laughs. It was being played, hey, this is a game you get to play over and over. And sadly, the Quakers had already forgotten the fair version of the rules. And, you know, the Quakers had already changed Monopoly beyond, you know, into Monopoly and out of the scope of the Landlord's game. And so we can't just say, hey, it's trying to do something different. So it's, yes, I agree. Okay, so there's so many great things about Monopoly. Actually, you know, paper money feels good. Escalating numbers feels good. You feel a sense of triumph when you've collected a set. You know, auctions are engaging. The fact that it's got a relatively low skill ceiling does mean that children are going to enjoy it because they feel like they got a chance to win. And they do have a chance to win because dice play such a big part in it. And yeah, the chance and community chess cards are kind of sometimes amusing and whimsical. It builds up a narrative. It's something that, unfortunately, and this is the inherent problem, that society says, hey, money is good. You want to do this thing. And so, of course, people are going to have fun playing it. I've had lots of fun times playing Monopoly. I'm not saying it's a terrible game. If you want my opinion, I honestly think Monopoly's a bad game. I would give it like, oh, yeah, like 3 out of 10. Like, I don't think it's like the worst game imaginable, not by a long shot. I mean, the world's worst board game, which was designed to be terrible, was like 1 out of 10. Like and like there's other games where they are fundamentally broken, where they just cannot advance, or games that go on way too long that have much bigger issues because they go on way too long compared to Monopoly. I mean, at least Monopoly has some vague sense of variety. But like, look, yes, it's not the worst game, but what I'm saying is that you can't just say if you play by the correct rules, it's a good game. I mean, come on. And in all seriousness, if you're I if you want my slightly more nuanced take on what I wrote, I will say that being aware of the history in which Monopoly was created and understanding that it has goodness as well as, some design problems is brilliant. And being aware of its place in history and the fact that it probably helped, bring about lots of things like, auction games were not really a thing at that point, and it just made. I mean, if you look at the Game of the Goose, this is a massive advancement over the Game of the Goose of just, okay, we start here, we finish there, and when we get to the end of the track, someone wins. This is a massive advancement over that. This is amazing. I mean, you go rounds and rounds, and the game keeps going, and there's some other actions that you can do, and landing on a space doesn't really mean that you've won or whatever. It just means that this is what you interact with. That's really interesting design. But it doesn't mean that it's a game worth playing. It doesn't mean that. So my issue is with people who, because I just saw an example of this on a Facebook forum, and I didn't want to call them out by name, but I've seen multiple examples of this where people say, yes, if you play it by the correct rules, it's actually quite good. And having played many, many games of Monopoly by the correct rules, and knowing that most of them didn't get finished because they'd gone on for so many hours, and we were trying to win, don't get me wrong. It's just that when you've got two superpowers, like, and it can go back and forth theoretically for, like, there's nothing to put a timer on it. And that's a problem. Yeah, I'm not saying Monopoly is rubbish, but what I am saying is, don't be like, this is not. It is flawed, and it's not just because we can't excuse it because it's trying to make a political statement, and we can't excuse it because of the house rules. Getting rid of the house rules does not make it an unflawed game. It's still got some major flaws, and even though it's making a political statement, which is brilliant, or rather, it was in its original form in the Landlord's game, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, the alternative rule set was removed, and Monopoly has changed quite a bit by unnamed developers. And so, Monopoly as a game is. Political games can be better than this. this should not be what people think of when they think of what can a political game be. I mean, Spirit's Island is trying to make a political point of, hey, why are we going and invading islands, and maybe colonialism is bad? And, it's not the most nuanced point, but like it's doing that, and it's actually a game that so many people have enjoyed purely as a strategic game. Similarly, I mean, holding on, the Grizzled, like so many other games that are trying to make a point, but are still, they feel worthwhile. If your point doesn't then have, further consideration through the length of the game, then it needs to be at least worthwhile to play. You can't just say, hey, I was trying to do something. Yes, sure. I think that it's better to do something cool. And so in context, in history, Monopoly was at the pinnacle of the design, but we have moved on. And so let's not pretend that it's anything more than an inherently flawed game that is now lingering with us mainly because of inertia and the marketing machine. That's my conclusion. And if you have any thoughts or comments, then please, get them in below. I am honestly interested in the conversation. And yeah, this is kind of my reply. Hopefully this has explained my thoughts and everything, but lots of love. And let me ask you, question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. My question of the day to you is just like a quick straw poll. Have you played Monopoly by the proper rules? Yes or no? Or I can't remember. Yeah, I might do that as a Twitter poll. But yeah, I'm curious, have you played it by the correct rules? And yeah, what do you think of Monopoly? That's like, I'm just trying to facilitate a conversation. But over to you, what are you up to? You can share a button if you want to. Today, I thought I had a lunch date, but they've just cancelled. I'm going to get myself showered, have a online chat with someone in a wee bit, do a bit of tidying and washing up dishes, and yeah, having a friend over this evening, which I am looking forward to. So to recap and wrap up before we finish up, well, political games are brilliant, and I think there should be more of them, but they need to be aware of their scope. I mean, Gerrymander, the political, I can't remember the whole subtitle, is a worthwhile thing, but it should stop at this point. It shouldn't then, like, those 6 levels, frankly, 5 levels would have been enough if they had handcrafted those levels. And I don't like the fact that you swap color randomly. There's a lot of design choices I'm not too happy with, but it doesn't need to now carry on for another 43 levels. Be aware of your scope and don't throw in stuff just because you feel you need to. Look, I'm not saying that a game can't be both political and a worthwhile game to play. Of course, Spirit's Island does it, but yeah, be aware of, if your game is meant to be let's play and then come to a conclusion and then stop at this point. Be willing to stop. Mapmaker, the gerrymandering game, is that a better way to present the information? I mean, in its current execution, I would say yes, but I want to kind of be aware of the point that it does look more off-putting. It does look more oh, what's going on? Whereas, it's slightly less accessible, I will admit. But they have decided that they are going to make a game to be replayed, and they have succeeded in that. Whereas what I feel like Gerrymander did was they weren't quite clear on, well, is this a game that people just keep playing lots of levels? Why? Why do people keep playing lots of levels? Why do you have this total score? Is it like, what's the purpose of this? Okay, this is feeding into a compulsion to keep playing, but why are we wanting people to keep playing? Yeah. It feels like too many design decisions went unexamined. Similarly, Monopoly, it's changed a lot from the Landlord's game, more than a lot of people understand. Yes, between 1904 and 1913, there were some major changes like the set collection, the fact that you need to get all of the things of one color, and the other major change is the fact that the original Landlord's game had two different rule sets, where it was like, hey, you play by this terrible rule set, which it represents the current world we live in, and then you play by this nice rule set where tax is a little bit more fair, and ask yourself, which world would you rather live in? And that was meant to be it. It was meant to be an afternoon spent with people together, but then people turned it into a game which, in conclusion, I think it's a perfectly fine. It was a great game for that era. I mean, as I said, considering the game of the goose and all sorts of things, which is just roll and move, and then you go to the end of the track and then you win. This is yonks beyond that. But we have moved on. And it's been stripped of the political, message that it had. I think that, it's been massively subverted, and it's been bastardized, frankly. And yeah, I think that Monopoly in its current form, frankly, it doesn't do a good job of spreading its political message that was in the Landlord's game, if we can still call it its political message. And I don't think it's the best form of worthwhile way to spend your, like, I just think there's better things out there. And yeah, in conclusion, I think that the success of Monopoly is entirely down to inertia and marketing at this point. That's all I'm saying. And yeah, so yeah, it's the people who say it's not terrible, it's got some redeeming qualities, you need to be aware of the historical context. I agree with you. The people who say if you play by the house rules, it's not that long, or it's a good game, I disagree. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It might be short, but there's no guarantee. And there's still the problems of player money. Anyway. At this point, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I am Stuff by Bez in all of those places, stuffbybez.com, stuffbybez.bigcursor.com. I've got to sort out my shop very soon. Twitter.com/stuffbybez, Instagram.com/stuffbybez, Twitch and YouTube.com/stuffbybez is where I stream every day at 10 a.m.-ish UK time, and stuffbybez.com/Discord if you want to join that. And, Wednesday will be a solo stream, but Thursday, I'm having Rosie on from the Cozy Board Gamer. So that's kind of exciting. And yeah, tomorrow I might talk about my deck construction game. Yeah, let me know. I might put up another Twitter poll. So for now, lots of love and bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Blue, blue, blue. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Blue, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. 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 Bye.